Welcome back to the Hot Sheet. Today, we've got a guest whose career path is truly one of one. From Harvard Law to USC Film School, from practicing attorney to producing some of the biggest unscripted hits on television. He's a lecturer at Stanford teaching the next generation of storytellers. He's the executive producer of 90 Day Fiancé, one of the most watched cable shows with 11 seasons and over 150 episodes. David Bresenham, welcome to the Hot Sheet.
Hello. That was impressive. Thank you.
That was quite a. I feel like we should be in an MME or arena or something.
UFC, yeah. Well,
UFC.
the thing I was as a 90 Day Fiancé producer, I just wanted to ask real quick, just fun loose question up front. When people find out, are they asking you like, "Can you find me a wife? Can you find me a girlfriend? Do you get asked that a lot?"
I haven't gone down with them. I do get a lot of like, "Ooh, I know that show," and what about this cast member or that cast member?
Yeah.
Nobody's been asking for the wife or the husband yet.
Okay, yeah, just curious.
I should clarify. I produced a show for quite a while, but not for like the last 2 years or so.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And we worked together on season 7, I believe. I think it's
and so I did 7 through 10 of 90 Day. 4 through 7 of B90, and then a couple of the spinoffs I did some on, but those were the main ones. Yeah.
It's the show that keeps on giving. That is for sure.
Isn't it amazing?
I really enjoyed working with you, David. It was a wild ride. And every time I mention 90 Days, people will go, "Oh, what do you do? What have you done?" I'm like, "Well, have you heard of 90 Days?" And of course, everyone's heard of that show. Everyone loves that show. And why do you think people love that show so much? Like, it's really kind of wild.
So, I mean, like you guys know, all of the shows that I've done, they're like, "Oh, you need a ticking clock," and half the time it's some artificially imposed, or 90% of the time it's an artificially imposed one that nobody really cares about. It's just trying to stir up a little bit of drama. But 90 days, it's either 90 days and somebody goes home and you break up, or you get married, which are both pretty big things. And so I think that's a big part of it, and just the stakes too. Like, it's not quite life and death, but it is. Getting married. It took me 50 years to decide to get married. It's a big and so yeah, like your choice of, is this my person? A lot of times without having that much information about that person, because you were separated by continents or whatever. And so yeah, big stakes, ticking clock. Like, it's got things that every show wants, but they're natural instead of having to be forced in.
I love, as a producer in the field, dealing with the talent and putting all the story together. I loved that part of 90 Days too, because it was just a built-in time clock. You had a framework and you had a story that was just happening, and it was just a lot of fun to just have this organic time frame. Like, we were not making that up. That wasn't fake at all. Like, that was a real time frame. We had to get the story within this time frame, and then, like you said, the stakes are like, get married or go home. And those are big stakes, especially when people are, they might not, if they decide to go home, they might not see that person again for. Do you know the rules? It's under the K-1 visa. These long distance couples get 90 days to be in the US and decide, like, do we tie the knot or not? And if they don't, what happens?
Visa expires, and depending on what administration is in, what their policies are, you could be picked up immediately and kicked out of the country. Yeah.
Wow.
If you're married, then you're on a different visa and you're relatively fast tracked to a green card. But if you don't get married, yeah, then your only reason to be here, if under a K-1 visa, is you've got that 90 days to get married or not. And once that 90 days is up, yeah.
Wow.
And then can they get another K-1 visa? Like, say that they decide they don't want to get married in 90 days. They go home to their respective country, but then they rekindle their relationship and they want to give it another whirl. Can they get another K-1 visa? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, like there were Americans who, had multiple K-1 visas with multiple people. I don't know that there was a rule against having multiple K-1 visas with one person. It never came up, but even with that though, and I think that's part of why the stakes were high for each couple is, it used to be a year. Now it's closer to 2 years from applying for a K-1 visa to getting it. You have to be a couple who's engaged before that. So you've got a long period of time together as a couple. You spend a lot of money getting the K-1 visa, getting everything set up. The non-American partner who comes over isn't allowed to work when they're on a K-1 visa. So there's financial considerations. And so you've got all these things packed together. So that decision of like, do I get married or not get married? There's a lot going into that for a lot of the couples. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was impressed by the amount of material that they had to pull together to kind of prove that the relationship was valid. Like documenting photos from years prior. I think that was one of the criteria. Just establishing like, hey, we have a relationship and here are the photos, here's the proof, here's the letters or the emails, that we didn't just meet a month ago and we're trying to, just get married and take advantage. Like they had to actually put quite a bit of time and effort into getting that visa and showing that they were legit couples.
I think like half the couples who get excited when they hear they're working on 90 Day Fiance, they're thinking of Married at First Sight. It's like, no, different show. They don't they've met
Yeah,
before. They know each
yeah.
other. They choose to be on the show together, not like being put together. Both good shows, but yeah, and both about marriage in one way or another, but pretty different.
Different show. Different show. Is
Yeah.
it the same channel though? Is that on TLC also?
No, definitely different. I think it's A&E for Married at First Sight, but
Okay, I don't
not
know.
TLC at least. Yeah.
And, do you know who the audience is for 90 Days? I was trying to remember, like, is this for a male or female audience?
Predominantly female, TLC generally skews more female, but plenty of male viewers and, of the people that I talk to, a lot of times it's with the guys that talk to us, "Oh, I watched that with my wife. She really likes that show." And then they'll have 50 questions. But yeah, the guys may not admit to it quite as carefully or as quickly, but yeah.
Does it trend well internationally?
You know, it I don't know if they've got, for some franchises, they've got,
Yeah,
whatever the version of 90 Day Guatemala, whatever. I don't know if they're uh, non-American ones, but are not. I know the show
yeah.
has a big audience because I remember, I was doing a before the 90 days shoot, I think for season 2, and we were in Kenya, and doing the big arrival, and somebody blew it because on the plane on the way over, somebody had noticed and they'd heard one thing and they were like, "Oh my God, is this before the 90 days?" And it's like, really? In Nairobi? This is, we have to worry about this soon. So people do watch all around, but I think they're watching through, Discovery or whatever global, as opposed
Yeah.
to spinoffs.
What's the biggest question that you get from people when they find out that you work on 90 Days? What do people ask you?
It usually some version of, is, cast member X really that crazy? And a lot of times the answers they are who they appear to be on the show. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
we can skew things a little bit one way or another for any reality TV show, but it really is hard to make somebody sane seem nuts and, somebody nuts seem sane.
I always told people that. I was like, "Look, I can't make you crazy. I can't make you, an asshole, but if you act a certain way and I'm filming you acting a certain way, there you go. Like I you know, like that's on you."
But
So,
please be yourself,
but be
whatever you are.
yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. The camera doesn't lie.
No. And a lot of people do want to know sort of with the show, like, are they only together for TV? It's like the easy answer with 90 Day Fiance is like they self-select. They apply as K-1 couples who've been together for at least a year or two by the time they're applying. A lot of times with the casting process, they don't have their visa yet, but they're, well into the process because you don't want to cast somebody a year ahead of time and then they don't get the visa.
How do they cast the show? I actually don't know how you guys do that.
Really well. Yeah. And again, I'm not doing it now, but they really good casting team who, would find couples and do little Zoom or Skype videos, depending on how long ago it was, and sort of do a casting tape where you can see the two people talking. You can get a sense of their personalities, and you can also get a sense of what they know or don't know about each other because if both halves of that couple knows everything about each other, they both know exactly whether they want kids, how many, they both know everything, every deep dark secret in the other's past. It's probably not going to be great TV. So you're looking for story tips of who's going to be good and ways to differentiate. Are these three couples going to be the same as these other couples that we had last season? Or at least can they be from a geographically different part of the world, or just a different part of the world? Finding that kind of stuff. But the casting team was very good, and they'd look for people from whatever country, and that helped keep it a little bit fresh because a lot of the stories do end up being, are they, is both people really in this for love, or are they in it for some other nefarious reason?
Yeah. Um, and how would they find these couples? Like, was there like a sign up on the TLC site or would they just troll Facebook or something? Like, how does the casting team even find these folks?
I don't know 100%. I think, you know, once any show gets successful, then there's a lot more people self-submitting, and so it gets easier. But, in those early days, looking out for them. I mean, with K1 visas, it's a little. I think a few more people know about it now because of the show. I actually had a friend 20 years ago who brought his fiance over on a K1 visa, and so I'd heard of it one way, but most people to me hadn't, and even a lot of people on the show, they know the couples from different countries, but they don't pay attention to what kind of visa it is. Um,
Right.
but because the K1 visa is sort of its own unique universe for people, there's Reddit groups, other social media groups where, I went through this process. Do you have any questions? Or, I'm, might trying to bring my fiance over from Kenya. Has anybody experienced that? How long is the wait time at that embassy? And so they'll connect. And so then casting could go onto those groups and ask, hey, do any of you want to be on TV? Did you guys meet in an interesting way? Tell us more, and then just sift through a lot of possibilities. They did a great job of coming up with some.
I mean, they did
Yeah.
a fantastic job casting. I mean, all the couples. I mean, I loved my couple, Robert and Annie from season 7. I loved them. They were, love them, but they're crazy in a lovable way.
Mhm.
But they did a great job because they were in love and they had the relationship and it was real, but they had a lot of problems and things they had not ironed out and lots of those long distance relationships when it's all love and romance and fantasy and then they get, together and there's a lot of problems that they have to sort out and real life decisions that they have to sort out that they don't really think about until they're on the ground. And I think the casting did a great job sort of sussing that out so that us producers could just kind of plug in.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but when my wife and I first moved in together, everything went smoothly. There were no hiccups, no nothing. Like, can you imagine having cameras around as you're
Oh
getting
my
used to each
god.
other
Yeah,
and
no,
trying to work through
Um,
all that stuff? Yeah.
no.
no. Absolutely
No.
And meanwhile, having a producer who generally has a heads up on where you guys haven't talked about certain things, and just like, oh, here's a topic of conversation, discuss, and let's talk it. Let's rub raw wounds a little bit.
Yeah.
Well,
No.
exactly, because it was all fantasy, like, "Ooh, lovey-dovey stuff," but then you're like, "So, let me ask you about Robert's ex-girlfriends. How do you feel about that?" And all of a sudden, it was like, "Da, da, 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 da," Annie would, she was Dominican, and she would get fired up, and, it was like a lot of fun TV, like, "Whoa," just gotta light the match, and you know.
Oh, they were both great because they both were open and they didn't mind, saying whatever was on their mind. Like sometimes I'd feel bad for couples where one was just spew any thought that came into mind, no matter what, and the other one was more reserved and didn't want to say like those ones. Sometimes would be like, "Oh, too bad for the introvert." Although not too many introverts like cats. But with those two, yeah, they both would just open up about everything, and they've got a pretty great marriage. However many years later, that was
They're still
20.
together, right? They're still
Oh, yeah,
together?
that was like 2018 or something, and
And
yeah,
they
they're going strong.
and they have a kid? They have a baby, or don't they have a baby?
Yep, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I did witness real love. It was they were fiery, they were passionate, they argued, but they loved each other. They genuinely did.
You did well.
Uh,
They were a fun couple. Like, they definitely had their hard times, and there were a few times where they didn't really wanna be filming, but they let us keep coming even when they were having trouble, and, yeah, I really enjoyed working with them. And with you, obviously.
Yeah.
Totally. Robert would be like, "Shorty." He calls me Shorty. "Shorty, why do we gotta do that?" I'm like, "Well, do you wanna be on the show or not? You signed up for this. Like, what do you mean? I'm not twisting your arm. You signed up for this."
We can talk about all the things that could only possibly make you look good and avoid all the obstacles or the differences, and that would be a really boring show and nobody. Yeah.
Yeah.
"Shorty, why you asking me that question?" I'm like, "Again," you know?
At least you could blame me in for some of it too,
Oh,
probably,
I
right?
did. I totally did. Sorry, but I
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had to do a good cop, bad cop kinda thing sometimes.
I would never ask a question this invasive, but that jackass, yes.
But David's
Yeah.
making me, okay? I gotta, like, I'm not gonna get my check, my paycheck, unless I ask you this question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Sean, you should have worked on this show. You would have loved it.
Yeah, it sounds fun. I love the good cop, bad cop thing. It's always fun.
What they're only gonna be there were a handful that were trying and not always worth it, but the vast majority were there were a lot of good people.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
Sean has a dating show idea. I think it's brilliant. A small town dating. He's like, "What are you saying? What are you gonna say?"
You wanna pitch America?
Small town dating. Or does that exist already? Probably exists.
I haven't heard it, I like it. Yeah, just where everybody knows your business
Well,
already.
well, yeah,
Exactly.
that's the problem with it, right? I mean, yes, I think it makes great TV because of the drama of just everybody already knows everything about you. And could be fun if you get in the right town, the right people, right casting, but yeah, it could be a real shit show as they say. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
casting
so
is key.
Yeah.
yeah, because you get an anonymity in a big city or whatever, but, like, if everybody knows both of your histories and they know you're dating now and I like it.
Yeah. Could be
All right,
fun.
we'll talk after the show.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, these relationships are hard to begin with. Let's just start there. Any kind of relationship. I don't care if you're besties, if you enjoy happily married, but every now and again, you fight. It's just part of the deal. So relationships are hard, and then add the cameras, that makes it hard. But then add the long distance part of it too. Like,
Mm.
what did you learn about long distance relationships? Like, would you ever do a long distance relationship, or what was your perception of long distance relationships before and after the show?
Yeah, like, hadn't had a long distance relationship that worked out. Uh, never tried for, like, whatever, to move together, but, yeah, I don't know, I mean, some of those couples were actually probably better long distance than together.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can, like, you've got this connection and you don't have to see the person every day, so they can be whatever you want in your mind, and you don't have to worry about, like, you don't have if you don't have the big conversations over the phone, then you don't have to worry about, whether you both want the same things in life, really. You have these lower level conversations with somebody who you like. And, and some people can keep that going for a long time and be happy. It's not the level of happiness that I would choose, but for some people, that can be good. And for some of them, the problems really were just, you lose that fantasy once you're together all the time, and it's harder to avoid things, especially with, you know, producers who are asking you to talk about things that are difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. That fantasy, it was such a part of their relationship because they imagined what it was like to live together. They imagined, that it was gonna be, champagne and roses all the time, and then they get to wherever they are and they're like, "Oh, wait a second." It like burst, the reality versus the fantasy is a little different.
And for me, that's with there's a million different spinoffs, but Before the 90 Days was one of them that tended to get higher ratings than 90 Day. And to me, that one is, you know, there's a degree of fantasy with 90 Day because you haven't been living together, but you've at least met before and decided to get engaged. Whereas with Before the 90 Days, it's I'm going to fly halfway around the world for a first date.
Wow.
There were people who, like, for those ones, almost everybody is projecting what they want. And then for some people, it actually works out well and it's close enough to what they were projecting that it works out great. And then for some others, it's holy crap, I was deluding myself. And it must be hard to realize with cameras in your face and producers asking you how you feel every 5 minutes. And
And
Yeah.
we did do that. We asked them how they felt because it's a relationship show. You gotta know how they feel at every turn. What show was that you were talking about?
oh,
The
but before the 90 days. So uh,
Oh, okay.
I think at 90 Day Fiance, then the first spinoff was Happily Ever After. So it was couples who had gotten married, or the ones that didn't, and it was Happily Ever After was more ironic. And then I'm not sure exactly who had the idea for Before the 90 Days. So all of those couples with the K1 visas, they had to meet at some point, the first time. And some of them it was just happenstance, but others, they'd been online pen pals, whatever, talking on the phone for months or years, and just all that emotion that goes up into meeting. And so, and then, okay, and for that one, it was always the American flying to the other country because that was going to be more different from 90 Day and more fun for American audiences to look at the other countries. But yeah, so that one was, if everything goes well on that first trip, then maybe your next step is to apply to get engaged and apply for a K1.
Got
Um,
it. Okay. Like the prequel to the 90 Days.
Exactly, like the prequel that came later, but yeah, exactly, like, you're looking
The
at the people. How did you
Yeah.
get into the K1 mess or the K1 joys, from in the first place?
Yeah, it's funny when I was doing this shows a few years ago, like, the K-1 visa was a predominant part of the story, and it was just something we talked about all the time. And, cut to 2025, the immigration conversation is a lot more complicated and political and it's just taken a lot of turns in the last few years. And do you think the show has helped people understand immigration or um, like, has it helped the issue of immigration or has it been more challenging because of the current conversation?
I don't know, I think for a lot of people, I think there's the disconnect between, what I want for the country and, what I want of the people that I know, and a lot of us think of the people that we see on TV as people that we know, so for a lot of people, I don't know that it connects, but definitely I think it has had a big impact, and to me for positive and for negative. The uh, you guys ever watch the show Border Wars?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So like 2010, just as birtherism and some other stuff is coming up. Here's a show about protecting the border from people coming in, and back then I guess we'll talk a little bit about the class that I did, but I hadn't watched the show back then. But when I was looking at things to show, looking at that one, because it really was sort of the early wave of people starting to think more about immigration for a lot of Americans to be thinking more about it. And it sort of framed, it's a war of people trying to get in and people not getting them out. And the way, the cameras were with the patrol agents all the time. And, you'd hear the way they talk. And there were some who were, sympathetic to the people that they were looking for and a lot who weren't. But that one, I think began framing things in people's mind. By the time 90 came up, I think it was getting more into people's consciousness. K1 not so much, but people coming in, especially the early seasons, and even to today, what's the biggest threat to the marriage? Like, you know, like the Bachelor from the early days, who's here for the right reasons, who's here for the wrong reasons. The easiest reason for the non-American to be in that relationship is because they want a green card or because they want the American's money, because we always assume that the American's going to have more money. And most of the time, at least on the show, they did. But yeah, so it's feeding into those to some degree. But I do think in the early seasons of 90 Day were very heavily told through the Americans' eyes. Like you got their perspective, but you didn't get a lot of nuance about the
Mm,
non-American. And then that started to change. And so to
yeah.
me, like uh at a certain point, it is very humanizing to see like, okay, here's somebody in the show still, at least certainly when I was on, once I stopped working on that show, I don't watch as much. I assume it's still, is this person just after a green card or not? And, for anybody in a K1, if you talk to 10 of their friends or 20 of their family members, you're going to find somebody who sort of has that fear, and you can get them to ask it and bring it up. So that still comes up, but also you're getting to see individuals who are from other countries. They've got cultural differences. They may look at marriage, whatever else, differently than most Americans. Uh, but you can hear their point of view, and they get a lot of TV time. Like those 2-hour episodes with 18 episodes. That's a lot of TV to hear from people.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think we got much more three-dimensional uh, cast members. Both the Americans got even more time, but the non-Americans got a lot more time. And so you'd get windows into the thought process. And, and I think not the show that goes into it that much, but most of us, in our relationships, everything isn't perfect. It's, we're looking for certain things and we compromise on some. And yeah, so I don't know. To me, it is humanizing overall. That also may just be the way that I try to sleep better at night. But my hope is that overall it has made people stop and think a little bit more about, hopefully most of like I love America, but also it's worth thinking of how people do things in other country and people from other countries, and how I can relate to them as opposed to just demonizing.
Yeah.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it, you know, opened my eyes to the process because it's not something you think about like, oh, like marrying somebody from another country. Like, what does that mean here in the States? And um, so I got, a sneak peek at that, talking to these couples and the people leaving there, like Annie, had to leave the DR and come to the States. And, she's leaving her family. She's leaving a lot of people just, because for Robert, because she loved Robert so much. But she had to, it was definitely difficult for her. And, to make that change. And she really needed to know from him that this was real, that this was love, because she was doing a lot to come be with him, and I don't know, I thought that was interesting. I mean, it's not like a heavy part of the show so much as the focus is the relationship, but these sort of, like the fact that she couldn't work for the 90 days that she was there, like that definitely put a strain on them, because Robert had to provide for all of them that whole time, and, so that was just an interesting stressor that you don't really realize, like, oh, she can't work. She physically is not allowed to work for 90 days on this particular visa. And
No,
that was something I just didn't know.
you ever be like, I love Robert, I think you do too, but there are way better ways to make money than marrying him. You have to love him.
Yeah, I mean, how many I think he was married 4 or 5 times before
Oh,
Annie
wow.
came into the picture. How many? I don't know. I don't lost count. There was a few kids from several marriages.
Mm.
She was, it was a big bet. She was betting on Robert. So she needed to know. She needed to know. Um, but yeah, it was interesting. She was not financially independent, and that was not her choice. She definitely wanted to work. She just wasn't able to. Um, So that was an interesting part of the story that I just had never knew about until I worked on this show. You never know what you're gonna learn on these shows, right?
Absolutely. And again, like, if early in my relationship or like before I'd spent a ton of time, because I think Robert and Annie spent 24 hours to go, like basically one day together. They
Yeah.
had fallen in love online, and he was going on a cruise, and he was gonna to be in the
And they were wasted the entire 24 hours. He got off the boat, met Annie on the beach, and they got wasted, and that was their whole time together.
So the whole thing was built on that 24 hours?
Yes!
Wow.
Yes!
Wow. 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 Wow.
and again, they're still married and doing well, but
That's great. That's great. But, phew.
And that was it. He was head over heels in love, and they wrote letters and FaceTimed and talked for 3 years, and then till she got this visa. And that's when we come in with all the cameras and film them trying to figure that out, you know?
yeah, but like I don't know for either of you, like for me, after spending the first 24 hours with my wife, if it had been like, all right, you guys can be together if you're going to financially support her for at least the next 3 months. It's probably going to be longer because she really can't work until she gets a green card, and that's probably going to be more like 9 months or whatever. And Joe,
You're
that's
like, "That's
that's a lot to
nuts.
take on.
That's
Yeah.
nuts. That's totally nuts." Like, I can't imagine, you know?
And
Oh
hard
my
for the
goodness.
American to have to support, but also, you know, uh, I think hard for the majority of the non-Americans who wanted to work, both to make money and have something to do with your time. Because, if you're stuck in some place where you don't know anybody else, your partner has to go to work most of the day, you can't work. What are you going to do? Like, that's not the easiest thing either.
Well, Annie gained 20 pounds because she said all she was doing was eating at McDonald's or something. She's like, "This American food, I gained 20 pounds." Because we would buy Sean, we would do these interviews throughout the show. Every time we went out to film, we would do an interview and catch up and talk about the scenes we just filmed. And we would wear the same outfits for the interview. We'd get them dry cleaned in between the interviews, but they were in the same outfit, so it looked like just one continuous interview, and Annie could not fit in her dress anymore because that's all she
Wow.
was doing was sitting around and, eating.
And
How
not
did you
specific
handle
just to her.
that?
That came up a lot. Yeah.
And you were like, "Well, you've got to fit into this dress. I don't know what to tell you." Again, I would blame you, David. I was like
Exactly.
David says you gotta wear this dress, so
How did you resolve that? Did she ultimately fit into it, or did you?
I squeezed her in that dress. I made her do it. I mean, yeah, she just was like, "Ugh."
There've been sometimes in the past where we had to sort of cut the back of the shirt and, because people get pregnant and
Right.
yeah, at a certain point, it's hard to squeeze in the same one.
It was really funny. I think, yeah, she's like, "Jen, what do I do?" I'm like, I don't know." I often bribed them with shopping trips. That was like, if they didn't want to do something, I'm like, "Well, what if I just take you to the mall and we'll get some." They loved that. That worked every time.
Absolutely.
Oh, the show's fun though. Like, even though I think the other thing that people like about it, well, people love relationship shows because it's always like, what's going to happen? And, I think another thing about the show that I enjoyed was you were never rooting for just this person or just that person. It was like tennis. You'd kind of flip like, "Oh, you're rooting for Annie, you're rooting for Robert. No, now you're rooting." It kind of went back and forth all the time. Like, nobody was really the bad guy. They were both kind of the bad guys and both the good guys. Like, I kind of liked going back and forth like that because you never really knew, you know.
Those were always the best ones. There were some where it just wouldn't work. One person's the villain, one's the hero, but it's best when it's both. And like ideally, the audience is rooting for the relationship and they're worried about whichever one's going to screw it up. And ideally, that's varying. But yeah, sometimes it is like you can't make a complete villain into a hero. You can't make a complete hero into a villain. So,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so fun. But one question, I don't know if you is that I always got when people found out that I worked on the show was, is it real? Is the show real? So I have my answer, but what would you say? How do you answer that question? Because I'm sure you've had it too.
yeah, I mean, to me, I was sort of the stock is like reality TV, on one end of the spectrum, you have improv with non actors, and it's just, today you two are going to argue about which color to paint the wall, and it ties into the renovation one. And last time you were a little low key, so Sean, do you mind yelling a little bit louder this time? And just there's plenty of TV. I made some of that, and it's just painful. Like if you're going to do that work with actors, and on the other end, there's you have sort of the full documentary, if documentary was always real, where nothing is sort of manipulated. Most of it's in the middle, and with 90 Day Fiance, it has the leg up again, just with the basic conceit of these are couples who chose to be together a long time before the show. They're not coming together because of the show, and they've if you do the casting right, which the casting team was great with, they've got big issues to work out. And so, you know, producing wise, it's more building a sandbox, so that, things are going to happen when you've got cameras around, and, how can you cue a conversation? So, if we talk to most of, all the key friends and family, and we know somebody has a suspicion about something, great. If you don't, like, we can talk to that person early. If you don't mind, don't bring that up when cameras aren't around. Wait until cameras are around and then bring that up. So it's a produced conversation, but it's still somebody's real concern, and the couple are giving their real reactions. With 90 Day, that was one of the challenges. Sometimes it's 90 Day Fiance, but shooting for 90 days with 7 or 8 couples would be horrendously expensive. And so there are about 20 filming days with each couple. And so when do you bring cameras there? And so, you're trying to anticipate stuff, and you're also trying to get couples to hold off on some of the conversations that they, probably should have had 2 years ago or 1 year ago. Uh, you know, I'd always also get the question, something like, do you feel bad about, like, they could have taken care of all these conversations before we started filming. Definitely once we're getting to filming, then I'm asking them not to have them until cameras are around. But, yeah. So, so me, it's one where, it definitely needed producing in terms of making sure cameras were there for the conversations. Uh, but no, it didn't need to be like, okay, today you two are going to argue about this. And, would you mind cursing this time? Because that'll seem better, or whatever else. That seemed like any reality show, you know, if you walk through the door and the camera, whatever the battery was off, can you walk through the door again? For most reality shows, that's not going to be a problem. That's still on the much more documentary side. And so for most shows, that uh, I certainly wouldn't have a problem with asking for that again.
Yeah. That's just typically how it is, right? Like these shows are real, like to have somebody come through the door again, it's because the battery's off is a totally fine thing to ask, and that's not, to me, in my world, doesn't qualify as a fake show, so to speak.
Yeah. No, I mean, in other shows, I've faked gunfights, I've faked sinking ships, those kinds of things, and there's nothing on that level going. Yeah.
No, I like that. I like that answer, and I think I basically would say the same thing. It's like you kind of build a sandbox. Like it's like on the scale of reality, you've got verite, which is the highbrow documentary style where you let things unfold and you just plug in. And those films are very rare, and you have to film a lot of footage, and it's very expensive, and you don't know what the outcome is, and that's just a very different style. And this is real in that you have a real couple with real problems, um, and you just kind of orchestrate how to be there. Like, we're gonna go to dinner. Like, you're obviously booking, the restaurant and going to the dinner, but you don't know what's gonna happen in that dinner conversation necessarily. Maybe there's some talking points that came up earlier in the day that you wanna follow up on. Like you said, you kind of follow up on the story, you're asking what's happening and that sort of thing, but the action, what they're saying is them, that is real. You're just kind of giving it like a structure or a location or an activity. I think we did like alligators or something with Robert down in Florida. Is Annie hated alligators and Robert really wanted to go, actually. He genuinely wanted to go. What was that? Gatorland in
Hmm.
Florida. And he brought his son and Annie just really didn't want to go. So it was fun because it was natural sort of drama where he wanted to go, she didn't want to go, blah, blah, blah.
But no, like hypothetically, if you got a couple who, one wants kids, really wants kids, the other one absolutely doesn't want to have kids, and that's going to be coming up, you could book, sort of a restaurant with all the games where there's a lot of kids in the background, or at least the ideally not kids, you don't have to blur them out, but stuff that makes you think of children, put that in the background, and that's the one where you invite the sister who, knows that, her sibling really wants to have kids and hasn't heard whether the betrothed wants that or not. And you might be like, tonight's a good night to ask that question. If you don't mind, I'll give you a thumbs up when it's time to ask it, because if you ask right off the bat, then we may not have much of a scene. But so we want a little bit of talking before. We're talking about whatever you want, but just when I give you a thumbs up, if you don't mind, however you want, bring that subject up. And and then you can get into it, and you're in a good background, and you get the whatever fireworks ensue. So hypothetically, that'd be an easy way to produce something that.
Right. You're just sort of,
Yeah.
you know, gently setting it up.
And to me, like, and I think everybody would have their own line, but to me, I'm just like, I feel fine if I'm not telling either person what they need to think. I'm not even telling, the sibling what they think. I just learned and I'm asking her to voice it at a certain time. I don't know. To me, that's still a real conversation.
Yeah.
It's
I
produced, but it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree. I
I
think
agree.
I think
Yeah.
that counts. Yeah, because we're not telling them what to say or how to say it. We're just exploring the subject and mining real feelings. We're just getting it out on camera. Like, those feelings exist. When Annie was mad, she was like legit mad. I wasn't making her mad. I might have prompted Robert to ask questions that would make her mad, but I wasn't making her mad. Like, that was already there. I just lit the match, basically.
Absolutely. And thank you for it.
So, yeah. Sometimes they would get
Yeah.
so nuts where I was like, okay, guys, let's bring this down. Like, I'm like, Robert, you're kind of like an asshole. Like you've gone too far. Now you need to make up. Now we need to, you know, because sometimes he just didn't know how to like end it. And he'd be just so mad, like legit mad. I'm like, okay, but we can't, you gotta like, we gotta bring this down. Every couple you gotta blend this thing. But he would be legit mad.
Absolutely.
But and I don't know if you can talk about this, but what about pickup scenes?
You know, uh, there were times where, like stuff's happening in the moment and you want to chase what's actually happening right there. And you don't have time to get, ideally your story sort of, you start rising tension, gets to a crescendo, and then make up or whatever afterwards. But sometimes, especially when you're not filming 24/7 with people, some of those early steps can happen without you. And to me, then it's sort of creatively trying to figure out, you know, what can fill those gaps. And ideally, you can figure out something where it's going to be 100% real, and in editing, you can move it and, place it out of the direct chronology, and it's going to make people feel that full uh, sort of building tension and release. So you get the story arc, and you're just manipulating the time some. I mean, with any show, the interviews, a lot of those are coming after the fact, and so then it's easier to get people to make connections that they may not have made during the scene to fill some of those. And a lot of times it was easy to get, you know, uh, some love scenes where there was good connection, and it was easy to get, or not easy, but like a lot of times we would get some of the real crunch moments, but sometimes you miss those things in between. And so, finding ways to get something where you're just illustrating it. You essentially need a montage. You need to see people going bowling together, doing whatever, and picking up
Right.
those after the fact. To me, was never a big deal. I would feel bad about, sort of, and this is for any of the shows that I've done. Like if it's faking a fight, that seems like a big deal. If it's, you need something that leads up to it, and so you pick something up afterwards, within reason, that seems fine to me.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I loved one reason I loved working with you is because it was just always clear, like, what we were doing. I never felt like, that anything that we did was like gross or off bounds or asking people to do something they weren't doing. You know what I mean? Like it all felt um real. And sometimes you just have to connect the dots and, make something a little more clear or what did you mean by that? Because that's how the shows work is it's a narrative story and, you create a conflict and resolve the conflict and there's usually several conflicts happening at once and you kind of chase these conflicts down and ultimately, they have to make the decision to get married or not, but all these conflicts play into that. So you want it to be clear. And so dealing with the talent always felt like I could, say to them like, look, this is, what we're doing or why we're doing it and feel good about explaining that to them. Like I never felt like we weren't in it together. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've found usually the best thing is to talk to people about why you're doing things, and obviously there's times where you know when you're going into Chuck E. Cheese, you don't tell everybody like, "Hey, we're going to talk about having kids tonight." Yeah, but letting
Yeah.
generally, like, before we'd start filming with any couple, I'd let them know like there's things I'm not gonna lie to you, but there are things that I'm not gonna tell you, up front.
Right.
We want you to work things out on camera, and you know,
Right.
s-
Yeah.
I hope you both can buy into that, and a lot of the couples did, yeah.
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 But
I felt like
here's
they did.
the danger of people feeling just super manipulated and turning off of things, and I've seen that happen on shows at various times, and that's hard to come back from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And the cast doesn't realize like that's hard on the producer too, because, you know, y- your job is to tell the story. And if they're resisting in some way, it's like, well, what are we doing? um,
Although
yeah,
it's
I
a
think
fun challenge, right? Like
it's a
once you
fun
get them lying about something or hiding, it's just like, okay, how can I dig this out?
totally. How do we mine this? But I found the hardest part was that people just had an expectation of what they thought the show was, and then they realized it's actually really hard work, and to have cameras in your face all day is hard, and we were there for long hours, and that's gets tiring, and I think people have a much more glamorous view of what the show is when they watch it versus actually doing it. When they do it, they're like, "What? You're coming back tomorrow?" "Yeah, we're coming back for 20 more days."
No, I think 90% of the cast are like, oh, okay, so I'm just going to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And the cameras are going to be around, and, you know, that'll be great. It'll be super entertaining. And then it is trying to let people know. And I do try to tell people up front, it's going to be a lot of work, all that, but it doesn't usually sink in. So then it is just, so gradually getting people used to, no, they're going to be long days. And, you're not going to be able to run off to run some errand in the middle of the day on a filming day because time is tight. And most
Yeah,
people
we own you that day. On that film day, we own you.
and trying to make it like it's in your best interest. Like the more TV time you get, the more interesting your story is, the more that can lead to, sort of subsequent opportunities for you. And so let's maximize these days. It was, ideally it's sort of building that team thing, but if I'm the cast member, there'd certainly be days where I was like, I'm tired of being on this team. I want a break.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's true. So when prepping for the show, I went through I took a deep dive and did some like Reddits. I'm like, what do the fans want to know? What do the fans want to know from the show? And the questions are so funny. I thought maybe you could have fun with this. But I guess so. Fans frequently ask about the cast's motivations, finances, and decision making, often questioning if the drama is real or staged. Well, we answered that question. But what about the cast motivations, finances, and decision making?
I
Is
mean,
that what do you have to say to that?
my favorite situations where a cast just, you know, wanted a unique life experience and filming was going to be something that would be different. Most of those days are gone. Like occasionally somebody still comes up like that. Like, you go back to the original Real World and some of those are just like, oh, here's something different to do. And that's it. Now it is much more of, you know, uh,
I have
I
an online business and I need to promote it.
exactly I can build my influencing career or something else. And I don't know, to me, I would rather know those up front. And especially if somebody has specific goals, great. Let's find ways to build those into the story that's gonna, I talk to people like, if you really want your business, then, when we're gonna have like a difficult conversation, that's the time to wear your t-shirt or to set it at the office or whatever else, because that's a scene that's hard to cut around. Like if we shoot a scene that's just you talking about, your favorite new vitamin that's amazing, you know, that's probably not going to make TV. But if you're getting into something that's difficult that everybody's been waiting for, yeah, and there's some indication in the background or whatever that it ties to whatever you want to promote, sure. Um, and there's laws you can't, laws and practices that you can't uh, guarantee stuff, but you can certainly arrange things in a way that it's much more likely that what they're what they're hoping to get is going to make air. So yeah, like to me, if people were upfront with what they wanted, that was usually good. I want to be popular to turn into something that I don't have an exact idea how I'm going to do it. That one's always hard.
Just want the fame.
That, and it can be sad too, because I've worked with cast on various shows where there is going to be that moment of fame. It may not be exactly what you want, but also then when it drops, like I've seen some people really be negatively affected from like, wait a minute, people don't love me as much anymore, and that's sad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that can be. Yeah, that's sad. That's hard. There's some funny questions like this one was I highlighted this one. Are these people really this dumb or is it just for camera? You're just like, what?
I mean,
um,
define dumb. Most of us are pretty dumb in some ways, and in
that
some
is
significant
true.
ways
That
where we
is
blind. Like we don't want to look at things that we know are going to be bad news or have a good chance to be bad news.
or why did they go on an international dating site to find someone?
Everybody has what they like, and
Uh,
we wouldn't have a TV show without some of those people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then there was this one, I don't know if you know the answer to this one. It was on Reddit. How much Botox does Amanda get to keep her face so expressionless? Do you know which Amanda that is?
Don't,
Or how How did Violet seduce Riley when they didn't even like each other?
Oh, okay. That was one of my not before the 90 Day seasons. I think most couples like each other sometimes, don't like each other sometimes, or like, it goes up and down. Again, my marriage is perfect. It's all been, just love each other every minute of all the time. But most people, I think, can relate to, there's times where you're really into the other person. There are times where like they annoy you for whatever reason.
Uh, fair. That was a fair answer. Does Misha
That one is part, like, that's another allure of the show to me is like, almost all of us can relate to relationships and the ups and downs that comes to that. So it's like, you've got that familiar, it's an easy buy-in. Like, I know this world, but also it's exotic because there's cultural differences that, even if you're in a cross-cultural relationship, like that's only two cultures, there's a bunch of other cultures out there. And so by watching the show, you're seeing lots of unique permutations of that. And so it's like, it's got that familiar and yet exotic at the same time that to me is like shows that have done well, like that makes it a lot easier to get success. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of tension to tap into. Does Misha think that hearing her name incessantly from Nicola is a sign from God that they should be together? Do you know Misha or Nicola?
I liked both of those. Maybe we use her name more often. I don't know. That's one of those ones I didn't notice in person, but maybe it does come up more often.
This is so funny. I mean, these questions are so funny. I find that really entertaining. um,
That
but
was one of the fun things. Like, I've worked on shows that were bigger and smaller. And like, I enjoyed doing the show, but there is something fun of like the episode airs and then people are tweeting and you can go on Reddit and they're talking about it and it's snide and it's petty and it's whatever. But it can be it's fun to see celebrities tweeting about your show or whatever. Like it's not necessary, but that wasn't an added benefit with 90 Day.
it's totally fun. I love like what did they say? People like track these couples and everything that they're doing, and it just goes on and on.
And did
Maybe
they
they
pick up on this thing that that I was hoping they were going to pick up on? Usually no, but occasionally, yeah. And so,
um but you are a lecturer at Stanford University and you talk about all this stuff in your class, right? Like, what is the title of your class?
there's two. There's one that's like introduction to production, making short films on iPhones. That's probably not the one. And there's another one that's reality TV in American society. And so critical studies, you know, instead of reading lots of stuff, it's just watching reality shows each week and then getting into class and talking about them and, sort of how, certain shows drive and sometimes reflect society. And that one's been a lot of fun to do. I've done that one like 6 years now and had some really good discussions.
Sounds like a fun
Wow.
class. That sounds like my kind of class. Sit around and watch TV.
Exactly, right?
I could have got a good grade in that one. What kind of what shows are you guys talking about right now in class?
It varies. It's a little heavier on shows that I've done than ones that I have, like,
Okay.
just because then it's easier for me to talk about them. But we get into ones that I haven't done as well. But sort of looking at you know where reality TV started, and then when it really took off, and then just way different groups are depicted. Sometimes like the easiest thing starting out is just to reflect stereotypes, and then and do things change, do they not change, you know uh I would argue that at times reality TV has driven positive change in society. There's certainly plenty of times where it's driven negative change in society, and just looking at them and also just trying to you know, we talk about how people are influenced by what they watch, especially
Yeah.
like Stanford students, they tend to be quite intelligent. And, and most of us, when we watch TV, we don't think it's affecting us. It's just entertainment. But yeah, it totally influences our decisions
Yeah.
in some ways. Yeah. Sometimes obvious, sometimes, a little more hidden, but yeah.
Yeah.
Does 90 Days come up in that class?
Sure. Yeah. Cause it's, to me, it's one that's both, it's an easy way for me to talk about specifics, on set. Cause some of it, we get into some ethics and some of that stuff as well. And so, with harder choices, it's interesting. It's an easy way to get into those. But also, I really do think that, when you're looking at shows that influence specific types of thinking, like for immigration, it is a pretty key show. Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting. And like, how do you think in general reality TV has affected our society?
I
That's
mean,
too broad of a question, but
I
uh
mean, one general one is just sort of, lines existed for a long time. There was big line before reality TV, but just sort of you know, reality TV and then social media starting not too long after reality TV got big in the US, and just sort of like creating an image and, saying it loudly, saying it over and over, and people starting to believe that. Yeah, reality TV's had a huge influence on that part of our society, I think.
yeah, that's so interesting.
Like, it's harder to believe, even the pre the current AI, like, it's a lot harder to believe things are true, I think partially thanks to reality TV, and thanks to a lot of things as well. But I think reality TV definitely tips the scales one direction, not the other.
Also, I think that pervasive question, like, is it real? Like, I get that every time, any of these reality shows that I worked on comes up. And I think people, I think they know on some level that it's real, but it might be, like there's a scale of truth. And, I think that there's just such, so much information overload out there that people have a hard time deciphering what is actually real and what isn't, and it's on a sliding scale, honestly. Um, and I think having the yeah, I think I could see how reality plays into that confusion because you have documentaries, which are supposed to be kind of like the, you know, as real as it gets. We can go on about this word real, right? We might be going into a slippery slope here. But you've got, documentaries and then you've got, fiction and then reality is kind of somewhere in the between. And, there's a lot of different like social media has its own conversations, and it's commenting about reality shows and so there's just a lot of different perspectives going on any given conversation. It makes it very confusing to find out to, really know what's real, I guess. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
No,
it's
totally.
complicated. It's complicated.
And I always like it. Always probably because like it'd be nice to do documentaries all the time. But like documentaries, have their own issues. Like Nanook of the North, probably a lot of people look at as the first one.
Yeah.
That has fake stuff in it from the very beginning. There've been plenty of documentaries
Yeah.
that have had issues, but not nearly the same percentage as reality shows. And those are just the ones that have become public. And I think there's studies looking at what types of entertainment influence people, and reality TV is right at the top of it because a big segment of the population will go with the presumption that it's real. And if you hit them over the head with something that like making clear that it's not real, then okay. But until then, it's going to be like, okay, this is real, and so that's the way people really behave, and so I guess that's the way I should behave. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are your students? What kind of questions do they ask or what do they want to know?
Who was your favorite Kardashian? That kinds of.
Who is
Who's
it?
your
Do you have
favorite
an answer?
Kardashian? Yeah.
There was no favorite. They were all amazing.
Okay.
Um,
Aw.
but no, you know, it's usually a little bit of a slow burn in terms of people come to class, and it is, it satisfies, a mandatory requirement. You have to take a certain number of of certain types of courses. And for this one, I get to watch TV. And then there are always some people who are into reality TV who, who are in the classes, but it usually takes a little bit of time for people to get curious. But then, yeah, they, you know, eh, some of it is, ancient history from the 2000s, which makes me feel young. But
Real world. Let's talk real world.
exactly. And oh my God, did people really watch that? How was that show popular? Not real, specifically, but for other ones.
Sure.
Um, but no, I think a lot of times, not a lot of times, but I do get the how do you justify doing certain things, whatever, and not quite how do you sleep at night because they know that I break them. But the nice
David, how do
version,
you sleep at night?
yeah,
I mean, really, you are kind of I just realized, I mean, you did season 1 and season 2 of The Kardashians and like 100 episodes of 90 Days. Like you are kind of like you reality guy. Like you earned that.
done a few shows that did okay. Yeah,
That's amazing.
the ones that tanked, but nobody asked about those.
Yeah.
Well, let
Simple Life, you did that?
Yeah, that was my first supervising story position. It was yeah.
Yeah.
wow, you're like a pioneer, a reality pioneer.
Yeah, I just missed the to be like I was coming out of film school and sort of gotten into documentary and film school, but liked sort of with ADHD, sort of like quicker stuff. And then when I was in film school, 2000 was Survivor and Big Brother hit, and it was like, oh, reality TV. And so my thesis film was like a reality style doc. And my advisor connected me with somebody who was in reality TV, and so started down that road. And yeah, it worked out well. So I missed the initial wave, but yeah, it was relatively early in, like with the docuseries stuff, like it was much more competition before then. And I was sort of starting out when docuseries were starting to rise more. I guess other than MTV, MTV had already been doing it for a while. Like most of the reality TV, MTV was uh, ahead of the wave.
Yeah.
So when you were on the Kardashians, what was that like? I mean, season 1, did you guys even know what you were doing? You just had all these girls and it was like
Uh, Most of us had been working on Simple Life, and then Paris was going to jail, and that show was going away. And I remember having a conversation with John Murray, the owner, and a bunch of us were there. And he was like, look, we're sort of changing the way we're going to approach things. And instead of swinging for the fences all the time, we're going to be like an old time movie studio. And we're going to have our A pictures and our B pictures that keep the lights on, keep the people that we want to, stay employed, that keeps them going. And our first B picture is going to be this new show, with his family with a long last name. And he's clearly a very bright guy, but nobody knows anything about what's going to be successful. But yeah, the expectations were so small that I'd been, story producing and supervised story producing up until then. And I was like, yeah, I'd like to get in the field. And they were like, okay, sure, you can direct on this one. And so they're like, go ahead and so the first season I was supervising story producer and director, and the second season I just directed. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. First seasons are hard, but they're a lot of fun figuring out where you're going to go. And with that one, the mix of comedy, drama, and so many different cast members, like there were a lot of different versions of that could have been that show. And yeah, it was fun being part of figuring that out.
Yeah.
were they sort of natural at this or did you have to did you feel like you had to kind of direct them and, have a heavier hand in what to do or how did that come about or was it just shaping the story?
They
Because
were,
season 1 is always like a blob. It's always like, "Here's an idea, and here's some money, go." It's not always totally clear what you're doing on a season 1 show.
and there was plenty of that, but I mean, you know, almost none of that family had filters, which is great. Like if I mean, if a lot of the shows that I've done, especially the docuseries, you've got like two people who will say whatever's on their mind, and you got everybody else who sort of it makes it work, but you don't have
Yeah.
that number of people who will say uh, whatever's on their mind, and who are pretty interesting people and into a variety of things. So you've got all these different avenues, and then the younger girls got older, after I was done with the show, and so then there was even more avenues for them to go down. But yeah, you had that going on. Um, I tell most of the cast I work with, they were, and they were the hardest working cast that I've had that first season. Everybody would show up early, they would stay late. At the time, now they've got tons of obligations and whatever else, but at the time they didn't have many, and this was what they were doing, and they were going to do it, and there was very much a dialogue of what was going to happen, but there wasn't a whole lot of like, we're not going to do that. I've had so many shows since where you know, somebody's like, "Oh, I would never," something that they would do off camera, but they would never do it on camera. And it's like, come on, just trust us a little bit, try something. And the Kardashians were great about that. Yeah,
That's so nice. That's great to hear because it's true. Like, I think, but it was early days though. I think now, I think if somebody signed up for a 90-day show or something like that, or there was another Kardashian show, there's so much expectation built into what it is and what it's going to be. And, that like back then, it's almost like nobody quite knew. So they couldn't, push back as much, I guess.
I think they could have. Like, I'd had other casts push back. I mean, part of it's privilege too. Like, that was a family. Like, they made a lot more money since, but they could afford to show up early and stay late. And other casts that I've had, that wouldn't have been an option. Like, they had to be making money. I don't know any show that for the first season with unknown cast pays them a living wage, and so it
Right.
uh, so that they could do that, whereas others couldn't. But it's not just that. There was a work ethic and sort of a curiosity and stuff that really paid off. You know, in spades for
That's
them.
amazing. What do you think of Kim Kardashian's new show? What is it called? All's Fair. The legal drama?
I have not watched yet, so I should check that out. But I don't know. Yeah,
I haven't seen it either, but I have read the reviews and they are hilarious. They got rated like a 0, I think. Like it's like this whole joke. Um it's I don't some of the there's where is it? I forget where it I'll find it in a sec. But it's a legal drama. I think it's seems similar to Suits, which is a great show, by the way. Did you ever see Suits?
that one I'd watch it. And yeah, I think this one's like divorce law. Like, I've heard some about
Yeah.
it, but haven't watched yet.
Yeah. It's anyway, the reviews, check out the reviews. They're pretty entertaining.
Y-
um
I was gonna say, you mentioned something about pay. Uh, reality TV, just for the people out there watching, do people always get paid to participate on shows? Like from your experience, like how does that work? I mean, wasn't there a time before like people were not getting paid at all, and now that's kind of changed over time?
While I've been doing it, primary cast has always been paid. There may have been a period where they weren't, but primary cast has always been paid. Uh, for first seasons, almost very little, but something. And then for secondary cast, uh, even now, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But to me, it's like if you're asking somebody to show up for one day, you know, uh, if the production can afford whatever, then great for them. But it's not that huge an ask for somebody to film one time. But if you're asking them to come back over and over again, and you know, yeah, it's hard to ask people to do that without giving them anything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Here I
At
found
sort of the should people be paid more? And probably yes, like a lot of other industries.
yeah,
But yeah, the pendulum has been swinging away from that for a while. Hopefully, at some point, it'll swing back.
yeah, yeah.
okay, I found the quote on the Guardian, the all Kim Kardashian's show. All's fair review. Kim Kardashian's divorce drama is fascinatingly existentially terrible.
Essentially, yeah.
It was just like, I don't know, I thought that was a really funny review. I'll have to see the show now. Now I'm like intrigued about the show.
To be fair, though, that may mirror, like, early reviews of the Kardashians too, and that one, it went a long time, did well for her, so it may end up doing pretty well.
Oh, so you got like the reviews weren't great, season 1?
No, I don't like, I think as long as that show lasted, I don't think the reviews were ever that good. It was like, people are, they're famous for nothing, all of that stuff. There was, um, somebody kept watching,
But the talent there though really is the ability to share, right? Like that's the thing when you start producing, you start to realize the people that have that ability to share and to me that's their talent, right? Is their openness and willingness to share and it is a talent, it is a talent.
and I do think that's one way that things have changed, from 2007 or whenever that one started till now. Like, the average American shares a lot more. Like, there are a lot more things that, I would never talk about that. And now people, not everybody, but a lot of people talk more about. Yeah. Um, my least favorite thing on 90 Day was always, in the interviews, having to ask people about sex. But that was nope, you got to ask more. And like, we've heard everybody else talking about, so what's unique about their sex? And some of the cats were like, great, I want to get into this. But most people are just like, I would rather not talk about this. And then, old guy, they're like, okay, so tell me what's going. Yeah, that was no.
Oh yeah, I blamed that question on you too. I was like, sorry, David, really? No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding with you. But I would have to ask them. I'm like, okay, guys, so how's the love life? And, of course, Robert loved talking about that because,
Mhm.
but yeah, it always was a little bit, awkward on that show. But, you know, it's like
Yeah.
a real life romance novel.
Hmm.
That is
Yeah.
funny. So, how did you get into this crazy business? You've had an amazing career in reality from the Kardashians, Simple Life, 90 Days, and then a million other Manly Man shows, which we haven't even talked about yet, which hopefully we will. But how did you get into this? Because you went to Harvard Law School, right?
Yeah, I went to a college. I'd be surprised if either of you heard of Wofford College. Although every now and then he makes the NCAA tournament for basketball. Really good school, but good school, but just small in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And uh, when I was, they had a scholarship that, and still do, that, they would send one student, because it's a small school in a small town in South Carolina. So they would send one student to developing countries for 9 months, and you'd sort of just bounce around from one place to the next, studying a social issue. And so I got to do that. So I had 9 months of doing that. Got home and some readjustment as a 21-year-old, seeing you know different levels of poverty and all that, and lots of uplifting stuff, but some pretty negative stuff. Got home, was not the easiest thing to motivate for a little while, and so I'd always thought about. At that point, I was thinking some about possibility of TV and film, um, and but also mom and my dad, to a lesser degree, like, always like, law is great. You like to talk, and you're an English major, and so law school is a reliable thing. And so it's like, yeah, okay, let me look into these. And by the time I got around to doing it, the film school deadlines had passed, but law school I had like a week or two left, and so uh, went to law schools. Got into Harvard and a couple of others, and initially wasn't going to go to Harvard because I didn't want to go to a place with a bunch of stuck up people. But mom and dad had another conversation, and they talked about, brand names and all of that, and went, and sure
I
enough,
mean,
like,
a Harvard law degree is, not so bad. So,
I've learned that. Yeah, it's and so, like, yeah, I listened to them, and sure, like 80% of people were just as stuck up and whatever as I expected. But well, even the jerks had really interesting backgrounds, and 20% was still like 100 people, over 100 people. And so, yeah, law school was interesting, but from relatively early on, then I was thinking like, okay, this is cool, but I'll have to practice for a little while, pay back loans, make some money, and then I'd like to go to film school. And then fortunately enough, it worked out that way. So I practiced full time for 3.5 years, worked at a English law firm doing international banking and securities, and then switched to a Los Angeles office of a national US firm that, I did corporate entertainment, a lot of record companies buying and selling each other. And then the partner that I worked with the most was nice enough when I decided I would go back to film school. He's like, we still have more than enough work, so you can work part time here while you're in film school. And so went to film school and would sort of on my breaks, I would get on, I had to get a cell phone, my first cell phone to do that, but then I would do meetings and stuff in between. So it pays better than McDonald's. I could pay for film school as I was going along. And started off assuming that I would do scripted because that's what I watched. And there wasn't really much unscripted, a little bit of documentary. Really like the documentary faculty, and as I got into that, I've got Asperger's. And so started growing up sort of reading people. And so I figured out, like with documentary, that was a good skill to have of being able to read people and sort of both to anticipate what they're going to do and also to know what to mirror to keep them, letting out their deepest thoughts. And,
That's
you
so
know,
interesting.
yeah, and then as reality TV got big, then it was, but also ADHD, like I can use my natural limitations or skills, whatever it is. And so like I'd rather do stuff where I'm got 10 plates spinning at once than one plate spinning for the next 3 years. It
Yeah.
just fit my personality better. And so yeah, it was
Wow.
to get into reality TV. My first show was Making the Band with Puff Daddy. I was willing to fly myself to New York and put myself up, and they were going to pay me, I think,
What?
$750 a week to be an assistant story producer on that. And it was
That's
good.
hilarious.
Wow.
Wow, that's such a great story. I didn't so your passion was film and you got there. You made it.
Yeah,
Would
like
you ever, would you ever go back into law or do you practice it at all or is it just something just a good check, background?
I mean, I think if I'd wanted to practice law forever, it would have been, criminal defense or prosecution work, like higher stakes. But it was law school was fascinating, and practicing was important to figure out, like, anything that you study versus you do, there's a pretty big difference. And so I was glad that I spent the time learning how to do it, and just, the thought process, just sort of analytical thinking, like, okay, we've got this big problem that seems unsolvable, but if I break it down into these smaller problems and those into smaller problems and start solving those, like any production that I've worked on, that's it. Just sort of thinking of how, to break down the problems and then check them off and what's going to connect to what, we do end up having to talk cast into opening up is the nice way to put it. Like, so the, the oratory skills that I learned in law school, those come in handy a little bit. Don't know that, just for doing reality TV, was it worth the money to go to law school? Probably not. But I don't know. For me, it was good experience. I like school, and so a few extra years in school wasn't such a bad thing.
That sounds amazing, and that
Yeah.
sounds exactly like how to build a reality show. It's just one big problem that you just, like, break down, break down, break down, and just chase all these little storylines, and that's what makes it so entertaining.
Totally.
Well, David, it's been wonderful talking to you. We could talk for hours. See, these time flies by in these.
It
I
was
I
fun.
think
Thank you guys. It made me feel
right?
it's great.
Yeah.
And,
Not easy.
um, it I could talk 90 days all day, but we appreciate your time so much, and we learned so much, and it's just been wonderful talking to you again.
Absolutely. Y'all as well.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
All right. See you later.
Thank you.